I know the title is controversial, but let's take a moment to think about my channel, because it's been 3 years. I'm finally celebrating 3 years on YouTube, and you're here with me, probably hating on the Marvel's movie. So let's do it together, I guess. Tune in the intro.
No! God, please, no! No!
Welcome back to Torn Apart, or if it's your first time here, the only place on the internet where we tear the movies apart until there is nothing left and we can go back to our own lives, which are definitely more boring than most of the MCU movies when you think about it. I'm a huge MCU fan, I'm a huge Marvel fan as well, so I went in the Marvels with a lot of expectations, mostly low expectations though. Honestly, this was one of those movies that I wanted to avoid. I didn't want to go and see it at the cinema, mostly because the first teaser trailer was utter trash.
I can't. Can you? I got it.
You had no idea what was going on, you had no idea how it was a follow-up of the first Captain Marvel movie, you had no idea how it would follow Secret Invasion as well, and you didn't really know why these three characters were meant to meet and group up together to fight a bad guy, like they did for the Avengers, like they did in other movies like Civil War. So those are the expectations that I had going into this movie, just to tell you that that's probably why I enjoyed it so much and I had such a good time.
You cannot protect your people.
But you can stand tall without standing alone.
We're gonna deconstruct the whole movie, of course. We're gonna talk about the multiverse angle, we're gonna talk about the MCU overall, we're gonna talk about the narrative structure, we're gonna talk about the performances, the special effects, we're gonna talk about everything, but let's start by keeping it spoiler free. So if you go in not knowing anything about the MCU, will you understand this movie? Well, actually, yeah, they really put a lot of effort into trying to make you understand who these characters are, where they come from, what their backstory is, and how they're evolving within this movie as well. Having said that, if you don't like Captain Marvel, I'm pretty sure you're not going to enjoy this movie. I feel like it's really clear from the very start, mostly because the entire structure of this movie is built around Captain Marvel, around her choices. This is clearly Captain Marvel 2, even though they didn't really name it that way. We're kind of in a weird Captain America Civil War situation here. That's actually why I decided to put it back there, because this is a movie that is kind of like serving as a sequel to a superhero, but also that is serving as a team up that is teasing future team ups as well and future MCU movies. So that's why I think a lot of people are not liking it. The tone is so completely different from Captain Marvel. But the thing is, I feel like Captain Marvel is one of those movies that was completely bogged down by its own concept, because Brie Larson, aka Carol Danvers, aka Captain Marvel, in that movie suffers from memory loss across the entire movie, which means that she basically doesn't have any personality, she doesn't get to shine at all, and performance-wise it must have been really boring for Brie Larson as well, because she's a very talented actress and she got to play only higher, faster, stronger, the kind of almost military environment where she's a soldier and she's fighting for a cause that has been fed to her by other people. And that's why I feel like if you go in having loved Captain Marvel, you're gonna feel pretty weird about the Marvels, because the tone is completely different. This is way more fun, this is way more upbeat at the end of the day. It is a team-up movie and the three characters at its center have great chemistry. Honestly, I was really skeptical going in when it comes to how their powers were gonna intertwine, and also it felt a bit like a gimmick, right? The fact that these three characters kind of forced to band together, but this time around it is the fact that they keep switching places every single time they use their powers, meaning that they cannot really be fully themselves without switching and putting the other people in danger, and I thought that they handled it quite well. This is one of those MCU movies where the action sequences are actually incredibly fun. I really loved how they were coordinated. They all felt very different one from the other. And one thing that I didn't really like about Captain Marvel is the fact that it was a sidequel that was taking place in the 90s that was in between, I think, Infinity War and Endgame, if I'm not mistaken. It was released around that time, meaning that we didn't really know exactly where it stood. It was kind of like a Black Widow movie. It's kind of a weird coincidence when you think about it, that when we have these female-led superhero movies, it's always about the backstory stuff, it's always about coming back to the past, it's always like at moments in time in the MCU where it's not really important. Captain Marvel, Black Widow, do you see the link here? It's kind of weird. So The Marvels is one of those movies where it doesn't feel like that anymore. The Marvels actually feels like it's part of the MCU. It doesn't really feel like an episode of the MCU that people want to forget as fast as possible, or that Kevin Feige felt forced to put out there, so they want to be attacked for representation purposes.
My favorite thing about the movie is like it feels like a movie. It feels like a real, like, you know, go to the theater film movie.
Having said that, I was saying that this movie is mostly based around Captain Marvel, right? Well, Monica Rambeau and Miss Marvel don't really have any character development in this movie. I mean, Monica Rambeau is basically defined by everything that you know about her. Basically the fact that Captain Marvel has not gone to see her since she was a child. She basically abandoned her, and that's the only thing that defines her for this entire movie, which is kind of weird when you think about it, because she was an important part of WandaVision, and you would assume that they would talk about it a little bit more, and it's not just about touching weird magical things and getting power and that's it, right? When it comes to Miss Marvel, it's kind of like a direct sequel to the series, which works quite well.
Well, that does not sound like science homework.
Okay.
She seems really more competent when it comes to her powers. She's always as excited and as energetic as she was in the series, and it's honestly quite fun to see her on screen. She's the highlight of the movie. She steals every single scene that she's in. I mean, I have to talk about stuff that has been going on online as well when it comes to Twitter, Rotten Tomatoes, critics just in general. A lot of people are criticizing Miss Marvel's reaction to Captain Marvel throughout the movie as too much, kind of forgetting that there are a lot of other characters, specifically guys, who have done it in the past and we didn't have the same reaction to them. It's kind of like the internet / the MCU fans don't really like when women are fangirling about other MCU characters.
It's an honor to meet you, officially. I sort of met you. I mean, I watched you while you were sleeping.
It's weird. It's kind of weird that we have to do that. Plus Spider-Man, Tom Holland Spider-Man as well. He was really into Iron Man. A bit too much, right? It got annoying after a while.
Mrs. Stark, it's perfect, thank you.
Yeah, we don't really need to start a conversation.
Okay.
So Mrs. Stark was like, hey, Underoos! And I just sort of flipped in.
Can I please just talk to Mrs. Stark?
But no one criticized it as much as everyone is criticizing Miss Marvel right now. Actually, most people probably they haven't seen the TV show of Miss Marvel, so they have no idea who she is. She's just yet another person that they don't like within a movie that they don't want to like, if you know what I mean. Let's maybe go into spoilers so that we can address everything that happens in this movie and deconstruct it and actually try to convey why I found this movie so incredibly exhilarating in a mass of kind of MCU mediocrity. If you just take out Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, everything else lately has been so incredibly mediocre and boring and not that satisfying. Of course, I'm not talking about Loki. Loki Season 2 is a masterpiece. If there is one thing that we can really criticize about this movie, it's the connection with the other MCU properties. I think this movie makes Secret Invasion even worse because it is shown basically that there is a lot of Skrulls living on a planet and there is a Skrull Emperor as well, and it seems like they've created a civilization, like there are buildings, the entire planet is to them as well. Like not even 6 months ago we watched Secret Invasion where it took 30 years for them to be upset about not having a planet and being refugees, and they all moved to Earth. It is clearly stated in the series itself, like millions of Skrulls are now on Earth, hiding and replacing people, etc. And they try to do a coup d'etat, basically, of the entire world, and they try to create World War III, basically, right? And Nick Fury is kind of fighting against that on his own because nobody believes him, and a lot of complicated stuff that I've addressed in other videos previously. This movie doesn't give a shit about that. Like, the Skrulls are living on a planet which is getting destroyed once again, and the Skrulls have to be moved somewhere else. And this time around, they're actually talking about the big problem that I had with Secret Invasion, where they're talking about New Asgard, and they actually send the Skrulls to New Asgard, which is something that they should have done so long ago. It's something that I didn't address within Secret Invasion, and it just drives me insane. This is a consequence of Secret Invasion. This is not the fault of the movie when you think about it, because it kind of just adds on another layer to the tragic story of the Skrulls. I like it, but it makes no sense when it comes to Secret Invasion, and honestly I want to kind of delete it from my mind because it was so incredibly underwhelming. Same goes with Nick Fury. This is the Nick Fury that we knew from maybe back into the Avengers movies, where it was like joking a lot more. There was not a lot of trauma, there was not a lot of tragedy behind his character or even mystery, because every single line of dialogue that this guy has in this movie is a joke.
Monica, you gotta fly.
No.
Black girl magic.
Which doesn't go well with Secret Invasion at all, where he was depressed. We found out that he had a wife. We found out that he lost his best friend, who is a Skrull as well. It just makes no sense at all. And it's something that has to happen at some point when you have such a large universe and there is a property that just doesn't work. And I think the Marvels was supposed to come out last year, right? And they had to rearrange stuff. So it is possible that Nick Fury was just rewritten basically for Secret Invasion to match the tone of that series. And at the end of the day, they just couldn't change it in the Marvels because a lot of things were already shot, and it just changed maybe the tone of the movie too much. Let's talk about the villain in this movie, which is part of the Kree. I actually really like the Kree. I think they're a really interesting species, and they do a lot of interesting build-up when they relate it to Captain Marvel as well, because basically it is revealed that Captain Marvel, using her powers, destroyed the artificial intelligence that was governing the Kree, and because of that the Kree planet just went completely insane. It started the Kree Civil War, and now they're just basically barely living on their own planet because they're missing a lot of resources. Their sun has died, the oceans is completely dried out, the atmosphere is almost unlivable. So there is this villain who comes out trying to get revenge at Captain Marvel, but at the same time she wants to get the resources from other planets to put there into her own planet. If we think about the scientific repercussions, this doesn't work at all. I'm pretty sure you cannot just open a tiny hole in your sky and steal the atmosphere from another planet. It seems incredibly weird. Plus, they're trying to convince us that the weird bangles that Miss Marvel has and that she uses to kind of like shape light into physical matter, those bangles can be used also to open like weird time-space portals, which is not really how the bangles work. So they're kind of like trying to do a lot of things at the same time, and it's kind of messy. And when you watch the movie, you'll probably realize that not everything makes completely sense, and I completely get that critique. I have friends who have critiqued that as well, not understanding basically why the bangles worked in a specific way and worked in another way later on in the movie. If we're talking about them switching places, for example, there is a moment where it just stops and we don't really understand why it stops, right? I really like the plan when it comes to stealing resources from other planets. It looks beautiful as well. It looks really tragic, and I feel like the stakes are fine because she's clearly just trying to destroy 3 planets and then she's gonna be done. She's gonna try to do that to Earth as well, but we don't spend that much time on Earth, which is fine for me. Like, we travel around, it's a space adventure. This movie is kind of like a mix in between Thor Ragnarok when it comes to the tone and Captain America Civil War when it comes to how it's structured, and I kind of like that. It's kind of fun because one of the things I didn't like about Captain Marvel, even though I was overall positive about the movie, it's the fact that once again we were stuck on Earth for most of the movie. It kind of felt like watching Thor once again, where they set up this incredible cosmic like universe and lore, and then they put our hero on planet Earth for the rest of the movie, and it just sucks, you know? The Marvels, they travel quite a lot. We get to see how Captain Marvel has been living, and she's quite lonely. I really enjoyed that. Honestly, they did quite a lot of backstory when it comes to Captain Marvel. Of course, you can feel that if this was just her movie, it would have been even better. And for the first time ever, I think I finally understand Captain Marvel. She's kind of like Superman, meaning that she doesn't really have that many weaknesses when it comes to her powers. Her weak weakness is basically the choices that she makes using her powers, because she has limitless powers, but she's not used to working with other people. We've seen it in Endgame as well, for example, where she's just like flying through spaceships, not even wondering whether maybe the spaceships then they're gonna fall and kill other people. You know what I mean? She's just like a force of nature, kind of like a Terminator. She works too much like a Terminator, and she has to work on that.
Here's a proposition for you. You're gonna give me your jacket, your helmet, and your motorcycle, and in return, I'm gonna let you keep your hand.
And this movie kind of addresses that, because every single time she uses her powers, she's gonna switch places with one of the other two Marvels, and it's gonna put them in danger, and she has to learn basically that she has to use her power in a way that it doesn't endanger other people as well. And I find that interesting, because basically she's flawed because of her character. She's not flawed because of her limitations as a superhero, and that makes her very human, because sometimes we make incredibly bad choices, even though maybe we have a lot of power. At the end of the day, it's the choices that matter. It's not really how we got there in the first place. So I really liked that point, and I loved how they started to build a family with these other two members. They have a lot of great chemistry, to be honest, like the way that they're talking to each other. It's not like that kind of snappy thing that they did with the Avengers, where you really felt that they started loving each other after a really long time, and just because they had to. And you always had the feeling that nobody really liked Tony Stark, even though they had to fight with him. In this movie here, there is a sense of sorority as well. Because they share the same kind of powers, they start loving each other because of their similarities and because of the differences as well. And because in a certain way, they feel lonely as well. They all feel lonely in very different ways, and just by uniting their powers and against a common threat, they create kind of like a surrogate family. There's a lot of things that can be discussed when it comes to this movie. When it comes to the cats, for example, I thought this was gonna be ridiculous. They were pushing the cats so much in the marketing material, and maybe that's because they didn't really have the actors to do it for them because of the SAG-AFTRA strikes and stuff like that. This is kind of like a movie that was kind of doomed to fail because of the strikes, because of how much people hate Captain Marvel and Brie Larson, and I still don't understand really why, unless it's just misogynistic and sexist comments. I just really don't get it. Especially when you look at the MCU, there are so many other incredibly bad movies which, yeah, they get a lot of bad rap if you think about Thor Love and Thunder and even Ant-Man Quantumania, but people forget about them quite quickly. While the Marvels, people have been hating on the Marvels, and they were hating on Captain Marvel constantly for months, pre-release, during the release, and post-release as well. It's kind of insane. It's so toxic. Now, I understand that maybe you didn't really enjoy the movie that much, so the title is a bit of a clickbait title, I agree, but now I'm sitting here being like, maybe you needed to set up your expectations in a different way. Ask yourself, what kind of movie were you expecting? And let me know down in the comments. I want to have this discussion, even though like this is quite confrontational as like a film topic within the MCU on Twitter and stuff like that. I actually want to discuss with people who didn't like it, and I want to know why. I want to try to understand what went wrong for you, and I want actual arguments. I don't want just weird sexist stuff, okay? Just let me know down in the comments what you thought of it. Let's get back to the cats, right? I was talking about the cats. I completely forgot to end my point about that. No. But it leads to one of the most fun and absurd sequences that I've ever seen in the MCU, and this is the kind of perfect way of turning something that has incredible high stakes, as the planet is about to be destroyed or the space station is about to be destroyed, and to make it fun. Because honestly, the MCU has put so many stakes out there. Every single movie is about destroying the planet, it's about World War III, it's about destroying the multiverse, the universe. I'm tired. So this movie was kind of offering something different where, yes, we understood the stakes, but at the same time, we can have fun with them. We don't really have to worry, and the movie knows that we don't really have to worry, and it plays with that. This is the perfect way of playing with the stakes of an MCU that is starting to drag a little bit, and I feel like this movie did it perfectly. Having said that, let's talk about the final moments, the post-credit scene, mid-credit and post-credit. Mid-credit, really fun. It's perfect character when it comes to Iman Vellani and Miss Marvel just in general, trying to recruit other people to become Young Avengers and making like a Nick Fury great impression. It was really fun. I'm really looking forward to the Young Avengers as long as it feels very genuine and it doesn't really feel like it becomes too serious too soon. This is a problem that we have with the MCU right now. We're not having fun. We're just trying to set up so many things at the same time. I was looking through Twitter, for example, and there is this one guy, I will put the comment right up here if I can find it, who was just listing out all the scenes that were mentioned or teased in the post-credit scenes in the last few MCU properties. And there are so many things that need to pay off. It's kind of insane, and it's almost impossible that Kevin Feige will manage to pay off all of these post-credit scenes. They're just putting too many puzzle pieces in the mix, and we're just feeling left out. We're just sitting there being like, how does all of these things fit together when we don't really get it? That's why I'm kind of have some problems with the final post-credit scene, creating like a link with the X-Men, with the multiverse thing that they'll be trying to set up for the past few movies, because I don't really care about it. It is very cameo purpose, as in like it reminds me of the original X-Men movies. Yes, it kind of looks like it was shot on an X-Men set. Like I want the X-Men to be different. I want another reading on the X-Men. I want everything to look different. I don't want to go back once again to something familiar, because that's something that they did with X-Men First Class, X-Men Apocalypse and Dark Phoenix, when they just kept trying to kind of like go back to the original X-Men movies. They never really managed to stand out on their own, and it's kind of weird and it's kind of sad when you think about it. And I don't know, just to see another post-credit scene once again playing with the original version of the X-Men, it just didn't make me happy at all. I was just sitting there being like, okay, fair enough, let's see how that unfolds. But at the end of the day, I'd rather they do something more fun and original.
It's time to stop! It's time to stop, okay? No more!
But anyways, those are all my thoughts when it comes to the Marvels. I probably have more things, and if I forgot them, I will put them in the comments. For example, the third act is yet another thing that I was sitting there being like, yes, it feels very rushed, but I'm used to it within the MCU, and honestly, I had so much fun in the other action sequences, even the dancing planet slash singing planet. So good, so much fun. It feels weird. It's very Thor Ragnarok once again. For me, the positives really outweigh the negatives, but let me know if it's not the case for you. If you like this video, here down at the bottom, I'm gonna put other videos of me talking about the MCU, of me talking about superhero projects, any other videos that are basically around the same subject of what I talked about today. And here at the top, I'm gonna be putting the thumbnail of the video that is supposed to come out in 2 weeks. We're getting really close to the end of the year. I can tell you right now, it's gonna be the worst movies of 2023. It's gonna be quite exciting, it's gonna be quite controversial, but it's gonna be fun. We're gonna tear apart everything together. Don't forget to smash that like button. Every single time that you do that, you're gonna give some support to all the actors who stood there until the very last second for these SAG-AFTRA strikes.
Can I count on you?
I'm really happy with what they managed to get, and I'm really happy that we can go back in a more healthy film industry and just have fun together. I'm Patrick, and this is Torn Apart.
Back in the 90s, I was in a very famous TV show.
Am I a cat?